Good evening, guys. One more time. So let's continue further. Today we are going to start with a new module that is Android programming. Are you all excited, guys? You there? Okay, fine. So basically, this is something what you are kind of targeting for. So your target or your career is going to be built around this particular area. That's mobile programming. And believe me, this is really good in the market right now because there are only two technologies are in boom today. One is the web development, and the second one is the mobile development. And hopefully, you already have seen web development earlier. Now, today we are going to start with mobile development, and you will see this whatever we have learned so far earlier, web development. The mobile development is a kind of extension to it. So let me just give you a quick overview of it. So today we are going to start with something called as a native development. Now, what is native and what is web development? I hope I mentioned it earlier. If not, I'll just quickly go over it, and then we'll see something called as a something called as a native development first. Once you understand native development, we will not use the Java and something like the Android Studio for developing the mobile applications. Instead, we will go for something called as React Native, which is an extension to React. So hopefully you still can recall all of the stuff that we already have learned earlier. I hope you still can recall React. You know how to use it. We already have developed a small website last time. And as I mentioned, there will be one more session where I'm going to show you all the entire website developed from the scratch again. So that is going to be later. So today we will start with the native part of it. Now, what is native? What exactly the difference between a native development, hybrid development, mobile development, and all sort of that thing. Let us first clear the part. Maybe you can say fundamentally, and if you can understand that, probably the next part would be something like a native development. Okay. So let's go for it. Just give me a sec. Let me share my iPad, and we'll go from there. Okay, now I'm going to create a new directory for you. DMC, do I have anything here? DMC, here it is. Oops. Yep, nope, I don't have any directory for you. So I'm going to create a new directory. That's EDMC. Okay, and let me start creating a empty notebook. Today is what? February 7. That's good. And oops. That's what I was wondering, why it's not going to show up here. Okay. That's great. So let us understand what do you mean by the mobile development from different angles, and we will see where we are going to start with. Okay. So what happens here is when you are developing an application, no matter which type of a platform you are going to choose, you always will find these two options. One is called as native development. The other one is called as web development. So let me mention that right here. So this is going to be something called a software development. I'll just simply say this is the development, or instead of saying development, I'll call it as an application. That's better, because ultimately when you are doing the development stuff, you ultimately are building something like an application there. Okay, so you know this is the application there, and in this application probably you know that this is going to be executed on your machine. And when I say machine, this is nothing but the machine, this is nothing but your the main machine where you are having something called as a CPU. We know all of this stuff that we already have discussed earlier. So when we are having a application there are two ways, or there are two types of application you might see in the real world. One, where the application will get compiled into something like the executable. So you are going to get an executable here. So this is where you are going to create an executable from language like, let's say, C or C++. You will directly get an executable there, which is going to have the assembly language into it. So this is the assembly code into it. And then you can pass it on directly to the CPU, and then CPU can execute that executable and then give you the output. This is one way to develop an application. There is another way, because the executable is going to contain the assembly. It is tightly coupled with not only your CPU, but also it is going to be coupled with, or you can say it is tightly coupled with the operating system as well. So there's an operating system layer in between, and the application will be made for that operating system itself. So when we are developing this application, we always know what type of operating system this application is going to run on. So precisely the diagram would go like this. So the application will be given to the operating system, and operating system is going to pass it on to the CPU and will get it executed there. So this is the way you can imagine a executable or a native application can be. So this is going to be considered as a native application. Native simply means we are having assembly code directly inside it. Okay. Now you see that when you're talking about a native, one of the main disadvantages of native is like this is the platform dependent. So maybe you can say platform or you can say OS dependent. In a sense, you cannot run Mac application on Windows application on Linux, or Linux application on these Mac and or maybe Windows operating system. So it's not possible because the application is a OS dependent application, and that's the reason why it becomes a little bit difficult for you to develop an application like this, which is going to have three different versions or three different three different executables for three different operating systems. So this is a kind of disadvantage. The advantage here is like it is very fast. It is very fast because there is no translation needed. So there is an assembly directly passed to the CPU, and you can say the CPU is going to execute that and give you the output. On the other side, if you want your application to be OS independent, you will go for something like a web development, or it is also called as an web application, something like this. Now, when you talk about a web application, you know that this is going to have something like HTML plus CSS plus JS. So when we are talking about an application like this, we are going to install or we are going to use one more application in between in order to see the output. And I'm talking about something called as a browser. So this web application will be loaded by the browser, and the browser is anyways, it's a platform dependent application. So we already have talked about that earlier when we started that last session. So this is a kind of overall picture here. So when we are on any platform, there is a native and there is a web application. Now, when we are talking about mobile, specifically for mobile, let me go back here and say what exactly the options are. This is a general application. Okay. Now let's talk about the mobile application. Mobile application is also an application. So first, you know that there is an application on any platform is going to have these two types, a native application and something like a web application. And there is one more category for mobile application now. Check this out. Now, when I say mobile, we are targeting only to mobile, or maybe you can say targeting to mobile platforms, iOS platform and Android as a platform. So this is going to be a Android and iOS application. So as usual, there is something called as a native application, native application. So we already have said that native application means you're going to have directly executable here, and that executable will be tightly coupled with the operating system there. As usual, as I said earlier, there will be a web application as well. So this is going to be a web app, which requires you to open that inside the browser, which is going to be like for the desktop, it will be there for mobile as well. And finally, this is going to be something like the hybrid application. Now, what is a hybrid application? We have to understand this here. Okay. So we know that now there are three types. One is the native, the second one is the web, and the third one is the hybrid. We know what native means and what web application means. So there is no confusion, I guess. And probably we already have discussed that native application is going to be having all the, maybe you can say the source code gets converted into the assembly code there. So this is how the application will run directly by passing the assembly code to the CPU. Now, when we are talking about the native application, now especially I'm talking about now the Android perspective, because we are having Android in our syllabus. So let's talk about the Android perspective here. So when we are talking about the Android application or and mobile application as such, there is a native application. Now for Android, we are going to use something like Android Studio, which is going to be an IDE you can think of. Let me just bring it down, or maybe put it somewhere here, or maybe put it somewhere here and say what all different things are needed for developing an Android application here. So the very first thing that you need is something called as IDE. Of course, IDE is one of the ways, or IDE is one of the things that you would need in order to develop an application. So we are going to use the IDE called as Android Studio. I guess all of you already have got that installed and you must be already ready with it. Am I right, guys? Yes, very good. Now, along with that Android Studio, what are different things that you already have installed on your machine? You have installed something called as Android SDK. Now, what is Android SDK? The Android SDK is having a couple of different things. So for example, it's going to have different packages. those packages which are different than Java. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention that here. So you're going to use different languages option here. So probably this is going to be the languages section, and we are having two options for us. Either it could be Java or it could be something like a Kotlin. We are going to use Java here because the syllabus has the Java, and we will see a small application of Kotlin later. So other than Java packages, the Android SDK will give you different packages, which generally will start with Android dot star. So Android dot something, Android dot app, Android dot content, and so on and so forth. Other than that, you are going to get ton of different libraries, the libraries which are required for running your application. Okay, you would need something like the tool chain. So let me mention that here. The tool chain here is nothing but you can say collection of different applications or different utilities, like something like a compiler, something like maybe assembler, or something like decompiler, and so on and so forth. And maybe I'll say other utilities or others. That's fine. This is something called as a tool chain. For example, because we are going to use Java here, the compiler we are going to use is something like a Java C. We know that we already have developed a Java application, so we know that there is a compiler called as a Java C, and this is what we are going to use for the compiling Android application as well. Other than that, we are going to use something called as a DX as well. Now, what is a DX? We'll mention that when we go to the actual diagram, and there we will see what exactly do you mean by DX later. Now, assembler is directly inbuilt in Java C, so there is no separate assembler needed here. So Java C itself is an assembler. Decompiler, there are various different options available. One of the options where you can decompile your APK file, for example, is going to be Java -p. It can convert your maybe something like a bytecode into Java. It's possible. And others, there are so many other utilities. Like one of them is something called as ADB. Another one is something called as the monkey runner, and so on and so forth. There are many different utility applications out there. Now, other than this, there will be something like a documentation. It's very important to go through documentation because documentation is always updated, and we should always get the latest information from it, which is available at developer.android.com. So this is where you will find the latest documentation. So I would encourage all of you to go to documentation every single day just to see what is there. Just skim over it, so you will get the total idea like what exactly we are going to develop and how we are going to develop that. Okay. Finally, we talked about the IDE. Now, last one that we are going to need, or some of you might need, is something called as an emulator, or maybe something called as an emulator here. Now, emulator is the one which is going to give you an option to run your application, Android application, on your desktop. This is something called as a QEMU. So this is the emulator you can have. There is something called as the Genymotion as well. You might know this. Some of you might have seen something called as BlueStack. Hopefully, that is very famous when you are developing, when you are running Android applications on your desktop. So this is a kind of option, or this is the kind of thing that we are going to use here. Okay. So hopefully now you got an idea like what exactly we need in order to develop a native application. So when I say native application, just a sec. Seems like I am running out of space. Just a sec. Much better. So when we are talking about something called as a native application, there, the application format, this is going to be very important because that's where the difference is. Application format, sorry. That is going to be APK. Tell me, have you heard about this before, guys? APK? Have you downloaded any APK? Have you installed any APK? Have you ever heard about that? Very good. So wherever you see APK, that is called as a native application. Or in short, the native application can be installed or can be created with a package format or the application format called as APK. That is where the native comes into picture. Now it is tightly coupled with the operating system itself. So once you develop this application for Android, you cannot just put that on iOS. So it's not possible. Okay. Now what about, I mentioned it already. So when you are developing a web application, we know that in a web application, the IDE we have used was something called as a Visual Studio Code, and that is again you are going to use later. So Visual Studio Code, okay. So that's where the IDE will be needed. The language here, we know that we already have developed this application earlier. So you can develop the same website, or you can make the website optimized for mobile. And this is again same story, HTML plus JavaScript. I'm sorry, let's put the CSS first. HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript, and you know that what other applications is needed. So how do you run this application? To run the application, we need a browser. Okay, so that is all about the web development. Web development you already are knowing here. The only thing which is a little bit different here is this, which is not available. I mean, it's these days it is available for desktop as well. I mean, especially for Mac and Windows. For Linux there is nothing, but especially for Mac and Windows it's still available. But we don't have to worry about that. We are going to look at that from mobile perspective. Now see here, when we are developing an application like Android, you know that native development will create an APK file. It's very fast because it's going to have the maybe you can say CPU assembly code, and that's the reason it runs very fast. But it's kind of operating system specific. So when you're developing an APK file, that cannot be executed on iOS. Now imagine you are a company owner and you want to develop an application for both iOS and Android. Now what do you need to do? For Android, we'll have to use Android Studio, Java as a language, and then we'll have to use this tool chain, and we have to develop an application. So that will work only on Android platform. Again, if you want your client to run this application on iOS, you have to hire those guys who know Swift, and they can develop the application on something called as Xcode. So there'll be two different set of, or maybe two different teams of developers who are going to write the application for Android separately and iOS separately. So that's how it goes if you are developing a native application for both iOS and Android. And because of that, you are going to invest a lot. You're going to need different environments in a sense. You need different operating system as such. So this is the operating system. You can develop an Android application for on Windows if you want to, or Linux, or something like a macOS. Precisely, this is the way we can write it now. So this is going to be the macOS. So there is no such restriction. But when you are going for iOS development, you cannot develop an iOS application on Windows or Linux. You have to have a macOS there. So the things will become a little bit crazier when you are developing the same application for both the platforms. That's where the hybrid application comes into picture. Now, what is a hybrid application then? The hybrid application simply means it is equals to something like a web application plus maybe something like the native application. So hybrid means it's a combination of web and a native. Now, probably you know that the advantage of native is it's fast. It gives you something like an APK file, which you can put on your Play Store, and then you can start, getting the, you can start selling it on the Play Store, and you can start getting it income from it, So probably this is a kind of income source if you are developing this application, if you are selling this application on Play Store. You can't do that for web app, and you can't sell a web app. You will have to have a kind of a URL with which a user can log in or user can use it. If you want to sell through Play Store and if you want to get it as an income source, then probably you need an APK file. But you are a web developer, for example, you don't know how to develop a native application for that. And that's where you can take an advantage of something called as a hybrid application. So hybrid application means the entire logic will be developed using the web technology. And finally, the application will be converted into APK file by using the native standards. So how do you do that? So what are different things that you need to use here? Again, you are going to use an IDE, which is, see, this is ultimately a web application. So if it is a web application, we are going to use something called as a VS Code. That's Visual Studio Code. Okay. What is the framework that we have to use? First, let me say what are the languages we are going to use here. And you will not believe me, this is the way we are going to do it. So this is going to be again HTML plus JavaScript. Oh, sorry. First, let me put the CSS here. So HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript. How simple is that? Okay, what are different frameworks that we need here in order to develop a mobile hybrid application? So you can use anything. There are many different options available. something called as the PhoneGap. I don't know whether you have heard about this. Then there is something called as the Sencha Touch. It's very old right now, but still people may use that. The one which we are going to use is something called as React Native. React Native. You see, this is the React, you know that that's for web development, and native because it's going to create your application into the native application. In a sense, once you once you start developing the React Native application, you will not create it as a website there. It will finally get compiled into a native application there. And that's an advantage of hybrid application. So whatever advantages of native application, whatever advantages of web application, we are going to combine them into a hybrid application there. And the good thing about this is, now see, I think you can look at that and you'll be very happy because, sorry, maybe I can say target here. So once you know that you are developing a React Native application, you can directly target it for Android. This is what our syllabus is of. And then you can target it for iOS as well. I mean, you have to write the code only once. You don't have to write it multiple times for multiple operating system. You can write it only once, and then you can compile it for Android and compile it for iOS at the same time. And that's the beauty of it. Now, how does it work? I'll explain that later, but right now, this is something called as a hybrid application. Guys, may I get the confirmation whether you have understood this or not? Native, web, and hybrid. Have you understood that? Oh, very good. See, so we have to look at all of them. It's like you have to know all of them, maybe technically, or you can say programmatically, whatever. But this is what you are going to target for. So there'll be native, there'll be web development, and there is something called as a hybrid development. Good thing about the development here is we already are done. You know that we already are done with web development, and that's the reason why we people asked you to sit for those sessions so you can understand React, you can understand the web development there. I hope that is going to make the things a little bit different for you when you go to your interview there. So we know this part. We already have developed this part. Now we are going to start with this, and then combination of web plus hybrid. We'll look at that later. Okay, so that is the plan. That's why we are going to start with the native development. Okay. Any examples of these these three to get the clear idea? No problem. Whatever you see, maybe I can just write it here. Maybe you can say the platform, or you can say the store better. So whatever is there on Play Store, most of the times, whatever is there on the Google Play Store, most of the times is a native. Not most of the times, whatever is there on the Play Store is native. I mean, it has to be a native, otherwise you will not be able to put that on Play Store. So for example, you're downloading games from Play Stores, you're downloading applications from Play Stores, all of them are native. Now, few of them are developed using the native standards, like by using Java and Kotlin. Few of them are the hybrid applications. Have you heard about Facebook? Just kidding, guys. I hope I mentioned that React is given by Facebook. So Facebook's Android application, iOS application is developed in hybrid. So this is the hybrid application. What do you think? These guys are developing this application twice, once for iOS and Android? No, they have developed that only once for both simultaneously. And that's the reason why this is a hybrid application. And you will see that later when we start developing React Native application. You will see that you have to develop the application only once. Once developed, the application will be available for both native as well as web, iOS for iOS and Android at the same time. That's an advantage of using something like a hybrid application out there. Okay, so this is the plan. So we are going to start with the native first, then we'll go for something like a hybrid, and then we'll try to sell this application on Play Store later. Anyways, so let's focus on this part now. Let's zoom into it and let us see what are different things that we need to know in order to start developing an Android application. I already have explained what are different things that you should use. So probably you should use something like an Android SDK. We have to use a language as a Java. We have to use IDE as Android Studio. We are going to target that for, or we are going to install it on all operating system if needed. I'm going to use Mac here. So you might use Linux or Windows. Choice is yours. And finally, you're going to sell this application on Play Store there. Okay, so I think it's more than sufficient for your introduction purpose. Now let's continue further and start developing a very simple hello world Android application. Okay, so you can understand what is there inside an application, and then we'll come back here again, and then we will see what are different. Okay, so what are different things that we should know in order to develop. Okay, I think I was working on something else, so let me close that. So then you will understand what are different things needed in order to develop this application there. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and start the Android Studio. I would not recommend you to do it at along with me, like what you are doing, or what you have done earlier in web development, because Android Studio and Zoom, I don't think your machine can handle both of that. So it's better you just watch what I'm doing, understand this, and do that later. I think if you want to get that revision again in your lab, then you can ask you can ask the faculty there. Maybe Rohan sir will be there, and he's going to explain that code one more time if you are stuck there. So probably you can write the code there with your own pace. That's a better option when you are going for mobile development. Okay, at least for Android, because of the application or because of that Android Studio, it's very heavy. I hope you might have seen that without even using something like a Zoom. It literally is terrible on your machine, I guess. I mean, mine is different story, but yours is, I know you are using a small configuration, or little, maybe you can say a less configuration, or you can say a standard configuration. Not, should I not say that less configuration? That's a standard configuration you are using on your machine. Mine is a server machine, so it's not a big deal from me. Anyways, I'm going to start using this Android Studio. You might have created a Hello World application earlier today, so you know what needs to be done there. All we have to do here is create a new project. Naturally, this is where we are going to start developing a mobile application. So when you are going to develop a mobile application, you would need to develop mobile screen. I mean, mobile application will have a mobile screen. By the way, I didn't mention this here. Let me first mention that very quickly so you can understand why you see these options there, like phone, tablet, Wear OS, Android TV, automotive, and something like Android things there. So let us understand this quickly. By the way, we are developing an application for Android. And when I say Android, Android is, let me just go back here and say that the Android is nothing but a mobile operating system. So what is it? This is an operating system. No doubt it is an operating system, but this is the mobile operating system. Now you know what an operating system means. You know what is the job of operating system, what operating system looks like, and how you can use that operating system in first place. Maybe I'll just define it very quickly. This is nothing but an interface between the user. I'm sorry, the interface between the user and something like the hardware. So you want to make your hardware useful, you can't use it unless you have an operating system there. So this is the operating system's job there. Next, what is a mobile? You know, mobile is nothing but the devices which can be easily ported, or these are the portable devices. So maybe I can just say this is mobile. Mobile means not only the cell phone, but mobile is nothing but the one which can be which you can carry with you easily. Now, under mobile, there are different set of devices you can find here. For example, the best one, or maybe the famous one without which you cannot live these days, that's your cell phone. You know, cell phone is a mobile. Okay, maybe the big brother, maybe you can generally call it as a phablet. This is also a kind of a mobile. Maybe its big brother, something like a tablet, it's also a mobile device, you know. Then its big brother, something called as a netbook. Netbook means it's not your laptop, it's a small laptop. Small laptop means maybe 11-inch laptop which is having a very low configuration, and maybe something like a Chromebook. That's a kind of a netbook there. Now, a little bit better and maybe higher configuration than netbook, it's called as a notebook. Notebook is also called as a laptop, and yes, operating system like Android can be installed on the laptop as well. Other than that, you can say there is something called as a smartwatch. Oh, by the way, when I say cell phone, I'm going to say that this is nothing but the smartphone. Probably you might have heard about that cell phone. Instead of just saying it here, better for me to say that when we talk about mobile, mobile is kind of not only the cell phone which you are using at this moment, But there is another category. Did you did you ever use this application? Did you use this phone, something called as a feature phone? A feature phone is like, have you heard about this Nokia? Oh, why am I writing it? Have you heard about this Nokia 3310? Not the latest one, the older one, or Nokia 3315 or 2100, 1100. Those are the feature phones. Those phones are kind of used only for receiving mobile, receiving call, making call, receiving SMS, and maximum you can send SMS there. Oh, maximum you can listen to FM there. And what can you do other than that? Maybe you can play a game like what? Snakes. Remember that snakes game? Exactly, snakes games. That's it. So that is a something like a feature phone. We don't use that these days because of the features, So this is a kind of a limited feature phone, and that's where we are kind of replacing it with something called as a smartphone. Now, first understand the definition of a smart here. So this is going to be a smartphone. Can someone tell me what do you mean by a smartphone? Yeah, car race, Sudoku, and all of these things. Exactly. Can someone tell me what do you mean by a smartphone? I know the one which you are using right now is a smartphone. Can someone tell me what is a smartphone here? What's an idea for you? Okay, it's extra features. Exactly. What else? Using internet or using network. Okay, fine. Touch screen. Very good. Okay, anyone? What do you mean by a smartphone there? Having an Android function. Okay, fine. Automation. Very good. What else? Multi-functionality. Okay, that's fine. What else? Okay, now let me tell you what do you mean by smartphone there. As I said earlier, there were only feature phones. We were using Nokia phones or Motorola small phones, and those were phones having only the capabilities of making call, receiving call, sending SMS, maybe getting SMS, and probably, maximum you can play games like snakes there. That's it. And people were using computers for doing the other stuff like playing music, playing maybe high-end games, watching videos, and sometimes doing the development there. So they were using phone for some purpose and maybe computer for a different purpose. So the manufacturer started thinking about why not to combine the features of these two devices together. Why not to add those features which you can find on your computer in your mobile? And that's where they started making the phone with multiple different functionalities. Like earlier, the phone was having a small screen. So if you want to play a good game there or high-end game there, you would need a kind of a better graphics. So they started making the screen much more bigger than that. They started making the configuration a little bit on the higher side. And when you say there is a lot of computer there, you can say there is a lot of hardware it's getting added into that phone. Because of that, the small function or the small you can say the firmware which was there earlier was not sufficient to run that phone. And that's where the manufacturer started thinking about installing operating system in order to manage that hardware. So as I said, an operating system is nothing but interface between the user and hardware. Now you are having all that stuff which you find on your computer. You are having CPU in your phone, you are having RAM in your phone, you are having kind of a flash storage which is nothing but the hard drive of your phone and stuff like that. So you would need an operating system in order to maintain in order to communicate with that phone. And that's where the smartphone concept came into picture. So a smart device or a smartphone is the one which has operating system in it. So maybe I can say, what is a smartphone? Maybe I can say a phone with operating system is called as a smartphone. Okay, so is Android a smartphone? Oh yes, of course, yes. The one which you're using right now, where the Android installed, that becomes a smartphone by default, because Android is nothing but an operating system there. So operating system, when you find in your phone becomes a smartphone. Similarly, what is a smartwatch then? I hope you can understand that now. The watch, sorry, not the analog watch, which was having, I'm sorry, which was or which still is having those analog clock. It's not that. So it's a watch with operating system. I hope you can understand. There are many different watchmakers around the world. Like maybe the famous ones include the Samsung, for example. For Android, I'm talking about. For maybe Android, there is a Xiaomi, or maybe there is Asus, and there are a bunch of others, LG, and all of them are developing the hardware for the Android there. Of course, how can I forget the Apple, because Apple is the top selling brand in the watch category. So there is an Apple Watch, so it also has an operating system called as Watch OS. Here you can find an operating system within the smartwatch as well. Now, along with the smartwatch, there is something like a smart TV. Now you can understand what do you mean by smart TV. This is again TV with operating system. So whenever you see that word smart, you can always associate it with something like an OS. Similar to it, there is a smart auto. Auto means your car. Have you heard about Tesla before? Of course, you must have, right? So Tesla has its own operating system. So that car which is having its own operating system, it becomes a smart auto, a smart car. So what I'm trying to say here is all of these are nothing but the mobiles, and Android goes everywhere. For example, when it goes to operating system, maybe I can change a color here and say when it goes to operating system, we call it as Android. That's it. Or Android operating system, you can say, for example. Maybe all of them, rather. Should I say this here? That's better. So for all of them, when you are having Android installed on all of this device, we generally call it as Android alone. That's it. When it goes to, or when it gets installed on a watch, this is called as Android Wear. Remember the name. This is called as Android Wear. When it goes to TV, it is called as Android TV here. This is called as Android TV. This is called as Android Wear. When it goes to auto, then it is called as Android Auto. This is not like operating system for car, but this is right now, this is kind of connectivity alone. Later on, maybe Google is thinking about to add an operating system where car manufacturers can provide the car hardware and Google can provide an operating system for them. Like Tesla has its own proprietary operating system, Google is developing one. I mean, it's a rumor that Google is developing operating system for all car manufacturers, like what they have done in 2006 for mobile. Like people, I mean, sorry, the Google started giving the free operating system like Android for the manufacturers, and manufacturers are developing the hardware. So that's how the business is running right now. So this is not only the mobile operating system, this is a free, very important, free and open source. You might wonder like why Android devices are so cheap, free and open source. That's the main reason behind it. Okay, so manufacturers like Samsung, for example, they don't have to invest anything onto the operating system because Android is providing, or Google is providing this Android free of cost. So they don't have to put their investment into the operating system there. On the other side, Apple is doing invention in both hardware as well as software. When you are purchasing an iPhone, there you have to, I mean, you are paying for both software and hardware. When you are purchasing Android, you are only purchasing the hardware because operating system is already free and open source. So that's the difference between the pricing structure for iOS and the Android, or Apple and the other manufacturers there. And that's the reason why when you are purchasing an iPhone like this, probably it will cost you almost like 144,000, 1,44,000. While if you go for something like, a phone like this is the OnePlus 8, for example, it will cost you more or less 60,000, for example. So it's almost like half of it, less than half of it. Even if you are going for the higher end versions of your Android phones, that's a major difference between them. So that now when you are talking about the Android can be installed on all of these mobile devices. And that's what the question you see right now when you are starting with your Hello World application. Did you notice that? The Android Studio is asking like, hey, what are you going to develop here? Are you going to develop a phone or tablet application? Or you're going to develop the watch application for which is having a Wear OS in it? Wear OS means it's an Android for watch here. Android TV application or automotive application or Android things, in a sense, the IoT part. That is completely different. So we are going to target only the phone and target, and that's the reason, phone and tablet. And that's why I'm going to select phone and tablet. And I'm going to say that this is something like an empty activity. Now, what is an activity? I will mention that in a minute, but understand that, or should I? Wait a sec. I'm going to open hypervisor. I'm going to open Visor, not hypervisor. Visor, and let me connect. I have many devices out there, so better I'm going to use OnePlus for now. Has been updated. Okay, reload now. That's good. Mine is already the professional edition, so probably I might have more feature than more set of features than yours, which is not going to be a very various. Just a second, it is going to boot. I think the battery was gone, so I need to restart it now. Just give it a second. So we'll see what is an activity here, and once you understand the activity, probably it will be easy for you to see what are you developing there. We'll use that. Oh yeah, it's starting. Just give it a sec. It's 1 plus 8, and it's almost like 2 years for this. I mean, I do have a collection here. When and if needed, I'll show you that. Okay, now please go and connect this. Very good. Let us see there. Okay, so that's an Android phone here. That's a OnePlus T, you can see here. So let us go back to settings application. So probably when you say settings application here, you can see that this is the setting application screen. Okay, so this is the settings application screen. In a sense, this what makes a screen is called as an activity there. So what is an activity? Go away. What is an activity? Activity is nothing but whatever you can see on screen. This is a settings applications UI, or this is setting applications activity. Activity number 1. So for example, if I go to Wi-Fi and internet, for example, this is another activity. This is another screen inside that application. So this is another activity inside that application. Let me open another application. Another application like which one should I go for? Let's go for, say, Airtel Extreme, for example. So this is one of the activities inside that application. Maybe if I click on, let's say, you, this is another activity inside it. This is another activity inside it. Activity is nothing but the UI here. That's it. So whenever you are thinking about an Android application, you always will start thinking about something called as an activity first. Okay, so let me mention this again. An activity is nothing but the UI. So whatever you see here, it is nothing but an activity. So probably if I go for calculator application or clock application, for example, what you see here is the clock applications UI or clock applications first activity. So this is an activity here. This is the example, or this is the question the application is asking, or the Android Studio asking to you, like, what do you want to add here? Do you want to add an empty activity, which is going to have an empty screen? Or do you want to add the bottom navigation activity, which is something like this on the top? Instead of top, it will be on the bottom side somewhere here. That's called as a bottom navigation activity. Or do you want to go for something called as a basic activity, which you might see in your messages application there? Or do you want to have a Google Maps there? So this is going to be a Google Maps activity. This is going to be a login activity where the username and password will be already there, and you can start getting the input from user. Or you want to go for something like a navigation drawer like Facebook. There'll be a 3 lines icon on top left top corner. You click on that and a sidebar comes there. So that's again an activity. Different type of activities are there, and you need to choose one of them. I'm going to select something like an empty activity here. So let me click on that. It is asking me like where or what type, what is the name of your application here? So probably I'm going to say this is going to be my application 1, for example. Every application, because it's a Java application, every application would need a package name there. Now, please remember, package name in Android application is going to be very important, because every application has to identify uniquely something like a package name there. So for every application, there has to be a unique package name. Later on, I want to sell this application on Play Store. And if I want to do it, my package name has to be unique on the Play Store as well. So there cannot be multiple applications with same package name in Android. So remember that. Generally, that can be solved by using something like a com. You will create your Gmail username here, and then you can put the number of applications you are going to use. So probably I might say com.my Gmail address is something like Python CPP, for example. So this is Python CPP dot application 1. Because Python CPP is unique, application 1 is unique for me, this entire package becomes automatically unique throughout the entire Play Store there. So that's what we can use here. I'm going to keep that com.python.cpp as it is, or maybe if you are using that example, maybe I can switch back to the example as well. It doesn't matter for now, but when you talk about, or when you start uploading this application on Play Store, there you have to make it unique. Okay. Now where you want to save this, I'm going to create a new directory for you. So let's go back to Sunbeam 2021. I'm sorry, it's full time DMC AWP. Now I'm going to create a new directory here, something like an Android, and right inside this, I'm going to create a new directory code. Right inside this, I'm going to create a new directory, February 7, and right inside this, we'll create a new application. So under this Feb 7, oops, Feb 7, I'm going to create a new application called as the application 1. So this is where I want to create an application there. Please select the language Java. Don't select Kotlin because you don't know what Kotlin language is. And what is the minimum SDK that you want to use? There are different SDKs available. So if you select something like Android 4.1, probably I don't want to. I'm going to go for Android 5.0 or maybe 5.1 is better. Lollipop. What do you mean by that? This means when you are selecting the minimum SDK as 5.0, your application will be executed or your application will be compatible with 5.1 onwards, like 5.0 Lollipop or 6.0 something like a Marshmallow or 7.0 Nougat, and so on and so forth. So probably when you're talking about the Android, I hope you might know the different codes for, different operating systems code for different versions. Do you know that, guys? Right? So probably you know that Cupcake, Donut, Eclair, and yes, this is ABCD, alphabetical order is there. So maybe you can say it's C for Cupcake, D for Donut, E for Eclair, F for Froyo, G for Gingerbread, maybe E, F, G, H, I for Ice Cream Sandwich, K for Kit Kat, and so on and so forth. This is a kind of a list of operating systems version, Android operating system versions available. If you don't know that, you can simply click on Help Me Choose and you can understand what are the different options available here. You see that the base version of the base operating system today is 4.0. Before 4.0, there were 1.0, 1.1, 2.0, 2.1, 3.0, 3.1. All of these operating systems are kind of deprecated. All of these versions are deprecated. So you can select which version you want to target it for. So if I select, let's say Pi or P here, probably you can understand the application will work only for Pi and Android 10. That's it. So this won't be compatible with Oreo and before. So choose the minimum SDK wisely. It's always good idea to go for something like 5.1. So you can get more features here, and at the same time, your application will be compatible with other versions as well. Anyways, I'm going to select this Lollipop, or I'm sorry, yeah, 5.1 Lollipop, not the other one, 5.1 Lollipop. Though it is kind of having 92% of coverage, I'm still okay with it. So I'm going to select that 5.1, that's a Lollipop here. Now, I don't want to select this using legacy libraries. Just keep it as it is. Don't select that and say finish. So when you say finish, your application will be created in a second or two. And this is where you can see the application is creating. It is downloading something called as a Gradle. On bottom side, you can see it's a Gradle. A Gradle is the way we are going to make your application or build our application. And just a sec, it's going to be taking a couple of minutes. By the time I'm going to go back to my preferences, search for fonts, and change the font to something like 30, for example. Hopefully that is visible to all. Is that font visible to all, guys? Very good. So I'll keep that 30 there then. Okay, so it's going to take a couple of minutes for the first time. Once it gets cached, next time onwards, it's going to take very less time. So this is the first time I'm creating an application on this machine, I guess, because I don't use this for Android. I have the other machine where I develop the Android applications. But anyways, this is where we are going to do it now. So it will take a couple of seconds, and once it is done, probably you will have your first application there. Now, I don't want to think twice here. I just want to simply go back and run this application to see whether I'm able to run that application or not. So when you are in Android Studio, you'll see that right here on this corner, maybe on the top side somewhere here, you can see the number of devices created or number of devices attached. Probably if you do not have any device, you can create one AVD, Android virtual device here. So you can create you can say emulator, or you can run the Android operating system right inside this, which I already have created, and it is having almost like 10 GB on my disk space. It's okay. So leave it. I'm going to run this application in my device right now. So probably I'm going to say select that select that 1+8, and I'm going to say run. You will see what is happening here. So it will take a couple of seconds or a minute max and then it is going to run this application inside this device. Yeah, I can see that now. It's going to be, yeah, see that right here, it is now developed, it is running the application on this side, and everything is looking good. So it shows something like a hello world here. Okay, so my application is running here on my device. By the way, this is the device and my application is running right here. So that's a proof that you just click on icon and then application will run inside that device. Very simple, and you see that it's very straightforward there. Let me start that application, and if I run that application one more time, it will be very fast. Within a fraction of a second, it got executed here. Now, one thing which I don't like is this hello world. Now, I don't want to use that hello world here. It's better I can just start developing my own application, put my own message. Let's say welcome to Android is the message I want to show there. How do I do that? Now, understand this. When you are in Android, let me just go back and quickly say what is an activity and how you want to create one. Okay, so probably whenever you can say an activity, I just mentioned activity is nothing but whatever is visible on the screen. So for us, we can say activity is nothing but a screen. Screen is nothing but, you can say, the part of your application. So that is nothing but a screen. So think about this for a second. Probably whatever you see on screen is an activity, meaning this is my activity here, for example. Or rather, this is what I want to develop here to start with. This is an activity here, okay? Now, in this activity, probably you can say you want to create the UI here. So this is my, let's say, let me say, this is going to be the name. I want to take input from user for name. Let's say phone number, for example. This is what I want to do, and so on and so forth. And then I will create a button here. Let's say save. It's not going to get saved in any database. It's just a save button which is going to print the data entered by user on console, and something like a cancel, which is going to cancel the screen there. Okay, this is an activity I want to develop. Now, when I want to develop this activity, you see that this is kind of a UI here. So probably when you want to create the UI, this activity, by the way, this is an activity, as I mentioned earlier. Activity is nothing but the UI or a screen for your Android application. So if you want to develop this activity here, there are two things. One is nothing but the code, or you can say nothing but the logic implementation. Logic or implementation, you can say, which is generally the language code. So this is going to be your Java, and precisely this is going to be a class for you, which is going to be generally the main activity.java. So within your folder structure, you will see there is a file called as main activity.java, where the logic will be implemented or where the code will be written. Now this is the code part of it, So when I say code part of it, this is where you are going to write the Java code. But how about the UI? Can I create a UI in Java? Oh yes, you can, but it's going to take a lot of time to do this, and that's the reason why we are going to create the user interface in a different file. This is where the user interface will be created. Now, when I say when I say user interface for that activity, in case of Android, this is called as a layout. Layout is nothing but the layout of user interface or the layout of your activity. Layout means it's a UI for activity. So whatever UI you want to create, it's called as a layout, and this will be created by using another language or another, the structure or another formatting, which is called as an XML. I bet you already have heard about this XML before. Have you? What is XML? Have you heard about that before? Extensible markup language. Okay, very good. If you haven't heard about this before, no big deal. We are going to learn that while we are going to write the user interface code there. Okay. So when we want to develop this application, the application will be having multiple activities, and every activity is going to have its own logic, which is developed in Java, and there'll be a user interface component, which is called as a layout, which will be developed in something like a XML. So that's how your application, or that's how your activity will be created there. Now, how do you do that then? I mean, is that straight away? No, it's not that straight away. So probably I can say that, let's say somewhere here. Let's see how it is generally done. Understand the logic, so it will be easy for you to understand that code there. So what happens here is, see, there is a blank activity. So this is where here. Maybe I can put that right here. So this is where a blank activity, blank in a sense, an empty activity will be created inside the file. So probably this file called as a main activity, this is nothing but the class, or this is nothing but the file, will give you an empty activity. So maybe I'll say this is an empty activity. Now, within another file, maybe if you just look at your code, there is a file called as activity underscore main .xml. So this is the file you can see, which is going to have the code, XML code for creating the UI. The UI is like this. Let me just copy that from here and say, oh, I'm sorry. This is the UI, just cut and paste, or copy and paste, sorry. So this is the UI, you see, and then you are going to add these two together. So probably I can say you're going to add them together to create the final version of your application. So this is where you're going to get the final activity. So how do you do that? How do you do that addition here? That's what I'm going to explain in a second. So to do this within your activity, there is a file, there is a method, something called as on create activity. So probably I'll put that right here. This is the mixture, and this will be done inside your activity with the method called as on create here, on create. Oops, on create. So there is a method called as on create, and within this method, you are going to say, maybe if you look at that code here, so you probably can understand what I'm talking about. So this is an on create method that I'm talking about, and this is the method set content view. So probably here we are going to say the method here is set content view. And inside the set content view, we are going to get the file name here. That's it. So this is the UI, which is created inside another file, which is something like the activity underscore main.xml. This is the main activity.java. So we are kind of combining them together within the main activity itself, within the class itself, and within the class, there is a method called as onCreate. With that onCreate, we are calling a method called as set content view, and then you are going to combine them together in order to create the final activity. So probably this is the UI that will be created with the help of adding them together. Okay, so adding them together will create the UI like this, and this is the way we are kind of creating the final version of it. So this is set content view. It is giving me something called as r.layout.activity main. So what is that r.layout.activity main? Probably if you look at this, the structure says inside your application, there are two types of files. One is the source code file, which is, where you can, all of the source code files will be laid out inside this directory called as a Java. There'll be a package name as usual, and there'll be a file main activity.java, right? And all the XML files, all the resource files, which are created inside another directory called as a res. So you can click on that res, and you can see that there is a directory called as a layout, under which there is a file which I mentioned earlier, activity underscore main.xml. So this is the file I talked about. So if you double click on that file, you will see this is where the UI is created. Okay, so if you just click on this button right here, if I say split here, so you can see both XML as well as the UI in the real time, So that's what I said here. This is the main activity.java. This is the activity underscore main.xml. You combine them with the help of set content view, and this is the final version of activity you will get here when you run your application. Okay, so main activity calls that set content view r.layout.activity main. Now, if you wonder like what is this R? This R represents something called as a res. What is a res? Res stands for resources. Resources means what? Those files which are not source code files are called as resource files. Better I should mention it somewhere so you can understand what are different things in your Android application. So probably I will mention them here. This is an Android application. Android application mainly will have two things. One is the Java files or the source code files, should I say. Or you can say source files or source code files, These are nothing but the files with the Java extensions. And the another one, the set here is resource files. Those files which are having .xml extension or .jpg, these are images, .png for example, and so on and so forth. So all of them are the resource files. Understand that the resource files are those files which are not source files, as simple as that. So this is the source files, and this is the resource files section. So we can have both of these files together inside our application. So if someone asks like what is there inside your application, you can say that there are two things there. One is the source file and the second one is the resource file. So when we talk about those resource files, the resource files are created inside a REST directory and the source files are created inside the Java directory. And that's what you see here. This is the Java directory and this is the resource directory. This R here, capital R here, represents that res. Inside res, there is a directory called as a layout, which you see here. R.layout means res. There is a directory called as layout, and activity underscore main is an identifier which identifies this file activity underscore main. So this is activity underscore main. If you control click on that, hold your control and click on that, and you will go to that file there. This is the activity main.xml, activity underscore main.xml. Okay, anyway, so now we know what exactly it is. Probably you can use it for developing your application and see how the UI can be created. Okay, so how do I create the UI? To create the UI, the very first thing that you need to know is this is called as a layout. I'm going to delete everything there. I don't need that, I'm not going to need this one as well. So probably I'm going to delete this and create something called as a text view. Now, what is a text view? A text view is the view with which we can show read-only text on the screen, which can be created by using a text view. And then you can come back here and then you can say a text is the property. So this is an element in Android. What you see here is an element, XML element. And what you see here is nothing but an attribute. So a text view has an attribute called as a text. If I say something like welcome to Android here, you see that the welcome to Android is shown somewhere here. Let me run this application and see whether I can get the exact same output on my device as well. And probably if I run this application again in a sec, I see that welcome to Android. So whatever you see here on the preview side, you always will get the exact same output on the device side as well. So you can think of it as a kind of a div in HTML, or as a kind of span in HTML, or as a kind of paragraph in HTML. That is called as a text view in Android here. Guys, are you all there and are you getting this? That's great. So if you get this, this is a text view here. Okay, now if you have a text view, you can add a few more properties there. First, tell me if you can recall. I see that the welcome to Android is very near to the left edge and the top edge. Do you know how to add a gap between the top border and the text, left border and the text, right border and the text, and the bottom border of the text? Yes, exactly. This is called as a padding. Inside, not outside, guys. Inside means it's padding and outside means it's margin, right? So exactly what you have seen in CSS. Go back here and search for padding. You have all the different properties here: padding bottom, padding top, padding left, padding right, so on and so forth. I'm going to say only padding and use something like 16. Here we use unit called as a DP, device dependent pixels. So DP, it's the pixels, device dependent pixels. And you see that now there is a gap on all the sides. I mean, the other side we can't see it because the text is pretty small, but it's very simple here to see. And look, there is a gap from top side and the left side, and this can be done easily by using something like a text view here. By the way, I want to change the text size here. I mean, in case of CSS, there's a property called as a font size. You might have used it to change the font size there, right? So here I'm going to use something called as a text size. And I might say, text size should be around 10 dp. Generally for text size, we use SP. And for other things, we use a dp. Remember that. This is the text size. I think I'm going to go for 20 SP, or let's change it to 30 SP. I think it's a little bit bigger. That's good. Let's go for 25. So probably you might see that this is a kind of a bigger text than that. I can also go for color by changing it with the text color property. Hopefully that's pretty simple to understand. And you can use your hex code here. So probably I can say FF0000. That is nothing but the red color. You see, I hope you know that this is the RGB. RGB in CSS, you already have used it. This is exactly what we are going to do there. Okay. So this is the red color, and I want to make that text look red. And yep, that is what I can see on the preview. Let me do that here on my device and see what it shows. Oh, it shows welcome to Android in red color. I want to make it bold. Do you know what is the property in CSS that will make the text look bold? In CSS, what's the property? You just have finished React, right? What is the name of the property which makes your text look bold? Don't Google it. If you know it, then only put it. Googling can be done here as well. I don't want to do that. Yes, anyone knows that? Leave it. It's called as a font weight property. So you can say font weight and say bold when you are in CSS. Here we are going to say text style and change this to bold, bold, italic, and normal. So this was normal text. Now when I run this, you see that it is going to be bold now. Just give it a sec. Once it runs, oh, this is bold. See how simple is that? This is the way we can do it. So you see that how simple it is. You're just using a text view here in order to show something read only on UI. Guys, may I get confirmation? Have you understood this? Very good. By the way, if you are having any question, please stop me in between, interrupt me in between, and ask the question. I mean, unmute yourself and ask the question. I don't mind. Okay. So ask as many questions as you want, and probably do not hesitate to ask any question. Kashif, your question, SP and DP, what's the difference? Right now, there is no difference. Later on, once we go a little bit deeper into it, I'll show you, or rather, I'll give you the difference. Maybe you can see it yourself on your phone. Right now, there is no difference. Just both of them are P, means pixel. Now, what is device dependent pixel and what is the static pixel? We'll see that later. Okay. So for today, just leave it. Both of them are same for us, at least for today. Huh? Later on, we'll see what's the difference there. Ekansh, italic language, you saw that there, right? So you can say instead of using bold, you can go for here and you can change that to italic. Italic means hopefully you can say it's a slanting here. Okay. So let me go back, run this, and probably you know that this is italic, or this is kind of a little bit slanted there. If you want to go for both italic and bold, you can do it something like this. Italic and bold. I mean, italic, this is the or symbol, but this is kind of a italic and bold, and both of them will be applied here. Don't ask a stupid question. How do I go for normal and bold? You can't, right? So you can go for italic and bold, or italic and normal, which is by default, or you can only go for bold, or you can only go for normal there. So this is kind of a bold, and that's how we can do it. That's it. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and use the same text align property. Hopefully you can see that in CSS. Here it is called as a text alignment. Naturally, I'm going to go with the center. So you see that earlier it was on the left side. Now it will be in the center part of it. You see, that's in the center part. As simple as that. I hope you can understand this. Now you see that there is a, you can say there's an element called as a text view, which is used to show maybe a read-only text on screen. That's fine and wonderful. I'm going to delete that for now because this is not what I'm going to show you right now. So probably I'm going to delete it. Delete in the sense I'm going to delete that other properties here, and I'll just keep that text welcome to Android here. Now looking at the requirement here, probably my requirement here is to design a simple UI, which is going to have multiple elements like this. Okay. So first, let us create a small UI, and then we'll try to create this on the application side. This is what my target is. I want to develop an application for, letting the user register so that we can get the user input and put that on the console. This is where I want to get the user's information. When I say user's information, I'm going to say, first name. So sorry. This is where the last name, This is where, let's say, phone number I want to get from user, and this is where email I want to get from user. Now to get this from user, probably we'll have to, design a small input like structure. So this is what we are going to do now. Let me just copy and paste it. So this is going to be a one more input needed for last name, one more input, one more time for a phone number here, and this is for an email. That's it. So this is what the UI I'm going to design here. Let's see whether we can develop this kind of UI here. Okay, besides these two inputs, besides these two type of inputs, we are going to go for a small button as well. So button, which is going to get the input from user, and we'll save that onto the console. Not today, we'll do it tomorrow, but at least we'll create the UI today. Creating a UI is what I'm looking for today. So saving and showing it on console will be done later. This is something like a cancel. Oops, this is going to be cancel. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do today. So let us see how we can do that, and what are different controls that we are going to use, or what are different widgets that we are going to use. So understanding widgets is going to be important for us, at least for today. Once you start getting this, you can develop that user interface on your own easily. This is the user interface I'm looking for. Okay, now all of these controls, these are called as a widgets, by the way. So this, and this, all of them are the read-only text. So this is exactly what I just showed you here. This is called as a text view. This is called as a text view. Okay, now all of them, the ones you see on the left hand side, on the right hand side, where we want to get the input from user, where in CSS, in HTML I would have gone for input. This is called as an editor text. So this is a text where we can get the we can show something on user interface in a read-only fashion, and edit text is where we want to get the input from user. And these two are nothing but the buttons. So button is button. You already know that in HTML you already have used the buttons. I mean, you already have used a lot of them earlier. So these are the buttons, and this is exactly what we are going to do here. Okay. Now the only thing which is very important here is something which is going to bind all of them together in a certain orientation or in certain way. Now I'm just going to mention that these are all widgets that we are going to create here. Widgets are nothing but the controls, So these are the widgets you should be familiar with. This is the simple one here. Now to bind them, we have to put them inside something called as the layouts. Now, as I mentioned, the layout means something like a user interface for you. Understood that. But there is one more meaning of that layout here. So layout is going to get all the input or all the widgets together. So if I'm using a single widget like this, text view, it's just going to show me only one text view. What if I want to show one more text view here? Can I just copy and paste it here? No, you can't, because that is against the XML law or XML's rule. XML says you can have only one root element here. You see, I'm getting an error here. So you cannot add another root element here. You cannot have multiple root elements in XML file. So you can have only one XML element here, or the root element here. And under this, you can add as many as you want. To add all of these, we have to club them using something called as a layout. What is a layout? A layout is something where you can create the group of widgets. So group of widgets. Okay, so this is called as a group of widgets. Now, every widget, the one which you are creating here, every widget is having this is Java, by the way. Every widget is having a class called as, or maybe every widget is derived from a class called as a view. So probably when we are talking about the text view is derived from view, edit text is derived from view, button is derived from view. So all of these widgets are derived from view. Now, if I want to go for multiple widgets together as a group of widgets, or you can say a group of view, this is what the layout means. In short, the layout is something called as a view group. View group means it's the group of views, as simple as that. This is called as a view group. So basically, when you want to group the multiple widgets together, we have to put them inside something called as a layout. Now, layout is an abstract class. I hope you know what is an abstract class in Java. You cannot create an object of that class there. And that's the reason Android has given multiple options for you. One of the options, one of the, the implementation class of layout is called as linear layout. This is called as a linear layout. There is another one, something called as a relative layout. There is another one, something called as a coordinate layout. There is another one, something as a frame layout. And there are a bunch of them. Right now, I'm just going to focus only on two of them. One is a relative layout and another one is linear layout. Out of that, I'm going to start with something like a linear layout. Why linear layout is needed? Otherwise, I mean, if you don't use linear layout or a layout there, you won't be able to put all of these widgets in one single group. A widget is a view. If you want to put them together, you have to create something called a view group. And a view group is nothing but the layout. Layout is an abstract class, and that's the reason why we are going to use a, you can say, a concrete class called as a linear layout, or a concrete class called as a relative layout, which is derived from the layout there. Let us understand the linear layout first. Now, linear layout has two orientations. I mean, there is a something called as an orientation here, with which you can, just simply get the things in one of the orientations, or one of the you can say, this is called as orientation, means how you want to add that, horizontally or vertically. This is called as orientation. So this is an orientation. Probably I can just put that right here. And depending on what type of UI you want to develop, you can go for either something like a horizontal or something like a vertical. I'll show you both of them, see if you can understand. Okay, so that's horizontal and that's vertical. So what is that? Let me just go back and put it here. Let's cut it out and let's put it here. We'll see that later tomorrow, but today we are going to start with this one here. So maybe I can say this is the orientation property that is going to define a linear layout in one of the fashions. Let's say you are going to have two text views here. So this is the text view one. I'm going to say this is okay. Sorry, just go back here. It doesn't need to have a maybe a text inside it. This is one text view, or any view. It can be a text view, it can be edit text, it can be button, anything there. So this is going to be, let's say, first text view, and this is going to be the second text view, or a one button and a two button. I mean, there are two buttons here, for example. It doesn't matter which view you are using. What matters here is the orientation property. So you see that when we are having, let's say, 1, 2, and 3 widgets, and if I use the orientation equals to vertical, you see that all of them will get placed next to each other horizontally. This is what do you mean by the horizontal orientation. Hopefully this is very simple to understand, because it just changes the orientation there. It just changes the direction there. That's it. I'm sorry. The UI will look similar here as well. I'm going to make it a little bit better, a little bit bigger. Okay, so let us understand this now. This was my this was my horizontal orientation, and using horizontal orientation, I've added multiple views here. It depends actually what view you are looking for, whether you are going for a text view or a edit text or button, whatever is there, but they will be added one next to each other. But when we are having vertical means this is a kind of, first one here. This is the kind of second one here. Whatever it is, it can be a button, it can be a text view, it can be anything, but the linear layout with orientation vertical will add them vertically. So this is the vertical orientation. I'll show you a practical example. You can get it immediately. See what I'm trying to show you here. This is called as a vertical orientation, and this is called as a horizontal orientation. Do you see the difference between them? One is putting all of these child views horizontally, and the other one is putting them in vertical order. Let's see this practically. See, I'm going to change this text view to something like a linear layout. Just use it as a linear layout. Linear layout do not have any property called as text. Remove that. And right inside this, I want to add different views there. It can be a button. It can be something like a text view. It can be edit text. It can be anything. I'm going to add a text view here just for our understanding. This is a text view. You start writing it, press enter, it will automatically complete it. Now, there are different properties for different widgets. Like there is a text property for text view, or maybe something like a text size property for text view, or maybe text color property for text view, and so on and so forth. So there is, I mean, there are two properties which are very common for every single widget you are going to create in layout. One is called as a width, and the other one is called as a height. Now, when we are using width and height, we can go for something like say 100 dp like this, and maybe the height could be something like 40 dp like this. Close this and you will get a text view there. How big is it? I think you see that right there as well. You see it's going to show me a wireframe, and I can just change the background color so you can understand how big it is or how small it is. So maybe it's hash ff0000, that's red color, and you see that it's going to be very small. Maybe I can just change this to somewhere around 500. Oh, it's going a little bit beyond the, okay, it's almost like 400 pixel. So you see that it's almost touching the edge. I can change this to 100 420. That's fine. So it's kind of a 420 which fits here. Imagine that we are kind of developing this application, and I'm using this text view here with something like 420 pixels wide or width, and with the 50 pixels height, something like this. Now this will run okay on the devices where you see the screen size is a little bit like a mobile screen, or maybe if you run this application on mobile, it will look good, you know. Maybe I'm going to go with, okay. So instead of this, I'm going to click on that pixel, and you see that it shows me different options, different screen sizes. This is the 5.0 screen. What if I run that on 5.2? Okay, maybe it looks good. Maybe if I run this on 5.5 screen, it still looks good. But do you see that now I started getting a small gap here because the screen width is a little bit increased. If I run this on 5.6, the gap is going to be a little bit wider. If I run this on 5.7 or let's say 6.0, still it's not, it's negligible, but still it is there. If I run this on 7.0, oh, that is very much visible. You see, it's kind of, you know, the gap is there because we are using this 420 pixels, and the 420 pixels for 7-inch, it stops somewhere here because of the screen resolution. You see, there is a gap on the other side. If I run this on 10-inch screen, 10.1 inch, oh my God, it looks so pathetic. It stops in between and it doesn't look good. I hope you can understand the problem here. The problem here is when we are using the hard-coded values like what we were doing in CSS, like 24 pixels or 140 pixels and so on and so forth, it was okay for HTML, but it's not okay when you are developing this application for mobile or for Android, you know. In Android, there are various different screen sizes from various different manufacturers. I hope you can agree with me. I don't know which brand you are using, but there are various different manufacturers out there. And if you ask me, there are more than 3,500 manufacturers for Android. I mean, there are literally 3,500 and plus manufacturers who are developing phones, tablets, watch, and so on and so forth. And all of them are not following the same standard. There are different sizes out there, you know. So if you're developing an application and if it happens like this, the same APK will be downloaded by a user on Samsung and on, let's say, bigger tablet. Like, I mean, this is the Samsung A10. So this is the tablet. If I run this application on these two devices simultaneously, then probably you will see the problem. The problem is it will look good on this device, but it won't look good on this device because of the screen real estate there. Now, so how do I make my application resolution independent? To do this, what Android says is do not use hard-coded values like this. Instead, use something like or use something called as a match parent and something like wrap content. Understand this now. If I use a width and if I say something like match parent, you see that no matter how big the screen is, it automatically will start on left and will go to the right. So if I change it to 6.0, still it looks good. If I run this on 5.0, still it looks good. If I run that on 9.9, still it looks good. And again, 5.0, the lowest one, still it looks good. You know, so match parent means use the entire width available there. I hope you can understand that. This is called as the match parent. The match parent means use the entire real estate available there, entire screen real estate available there. If I use that match parent for height, probably whatever is the space available vertically, assign it to assign it to that text view here. I'm going to use a text property and say welcome to Android. This is something which I showed earlier as well. Let me use the text color as white. That's FF, that's white. Let's change the text size to say 30 SP, as I said earlier. And I think it's more or less visible, okay? I'm going to add a padding of say 15 or 10 dp, and that's much better, you know. Understand this match parent and wrap content first. Match parent means use the entire screen. If you put that on width, use the entire screen on the horizontal side. And if you put that on height, use the entire screen vertical side. This is what you mean by match parent. If I change that match parent for height, and if I put that something on a wrap content means use only that much portion which is needed to show that view right here. So I think to show that welcome to Android, this much screen is, or this much height is needed, it will automatically calculate it and will set it there. I hope you can see the difference between wrap content and match parent. If I use the wrap content here on the width side, what is going to happen? Whatever amount of screen or whatever amount of size is needed to display that message, welcome to Android, this much amount of width will be allocated there. If I go for match parent, it's going to use the entire space. If I go for welcome to Android with layout width equals to wrap content, whatever the message you are using here, if I just put the welcome here, it's just going to adjust itself to show that particular text there. That's called as a wrap content there. Okay. So if I say wrap content, it's going to shorten it down from the width side and height side, depending on where you are writing it, to adjust the content or to show the content itself. If I change it to match parent, probably you can see that on width side, it is going to take the entire space, and on the height side, it is going to take only that much of space which is needed to show it there. Are you getting it, guys? Really? Okay. So if you're getting it, let me change that text alignment to center. So it'll be center here. Okay. And instead of saying welcome to Android, I'm going to say register a user or sign up, for example. As simple as that. So that's a screen I'm developing here, for example. Okay. That's wrap content here. Now watch this. I'm using a linear layout here because I want to add multiple text views. You cannot add multiple text views unless you have one of the layouts there. It can be a layout like linear layout or layout like a relative layout. Excuse me. So we are having a text view here. Let me go back and create one more text view now. Again, I'm going to say match parent and wrap content. Hopefully you can understand. Match parent on the width side means use whatever width available there, and wrap content on the height side means use whatever content or whatever size is needed for display that text there. So maybe I can go for what is that, first name, I guess I'm looking for a user, and that's how we can do it. Now you see that the first text is available here, but the second text view is not available here. Why on the other is not available? It's not available because when you are using linear layout, as I said here, you have to use the orientation property and say whether it's a horizontal or vertical. By default is a horizontal, and that's the reason why you are not able to see that there. I'm going to go back here and change that orientation property to vertical, and you see that magically these two guys talk to each other, or maybe these two guys are next to each other vertically. I'm going to change this match parent to wrap content and make it small enough to fit it here. Do the same thing for text views like first name, and if I say wrap content, you see it's kind of doing the same job here. Now check this out. I think it's too small right now. Let me use the text size property and make it 20, for example, so I can at least see it. And text color property to 000000. That's black. So I can at least see it where it starts and where it ends, you know. So I want to put that horizontal to each other. Next to each other, what I just showed here. I can do that easily by changing that orientation to something like horizontal. And you see that now I see the sign up and first name, those are next to each other horizontally. If I change that horizontal to vertical, I see that both of them are next to each other vertically. You see, that's something which you can understand, vertical and horizontal orientation from this example. May I get the confirmation, guys, whether you have understood the technique here? Very good. You see, how simple is that? See? Okay, anyways, I'm going to keep it vertical. I do not want to use it wrap content. I'm going to make it match parent, as simple as that. So I got the text view for first name. You see, I need the first name, I need the last name. So I'm going to literally copy this and say, hey, I need this for last name as well. I need this for phone number as well, you know. So go back here and say this is going to be the phone number. Next, I need it for something like an email address as well. So I'm going to call it as email address. See how simple is that? I'm creating a user interface here, and that makes my life so simple. Sorry, so simple. Where are you? Oh my God, it's too big right now. Oops, let's say reset. So that's okay. So you see that this is how it is going to do. I'm sorry, this is how it is going to do the job. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you can understand what is going on. So it's the way we are kind of doing this job easily. I don't want to go do this here. I just want to do the design. I don't want to go for the blueprint here. Let's focus on this part first. So this is how we can do it, you know. So that's where you can see the text views here, and that's where you can see the sign up here. I think it doesn't make any sense to just put it somewhere here. So I'm going to make this width as match parent, you know, match parent. You see how it increases. I would say after the session, you play with it so you can understand what is going on. All of them are really touching on all the sides of it. So probably what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the linear layout, a property called as a padding, and we'll add 15 dp, sorry, 16 dp. So you see, that's what we have said last time. Okay. Okay, so sign up, it doesn't make any sense to have a background color as red. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back and delete this one here, and the text color will make it 000000. That's black color, you know. And I'm going to go back and say text style to bold. You see, that's how we are going to do it. That's fine, you know. So we are having a sign up screen. We are having the first name, last name, phone number, and email address. As simple as that. If I run this application again on my phone now, whatever you see here, you are going to get on your phone. As simple as that. So this is how we are going to develop a UI, and we're going to put that on our application, on our device there. See how simple is that? So this is how we can create our UI. I don't have an answer. Just go away, Siri. The question is, fine, I know there's a first name, last name, phone number, email address, but how do I enter the text there? Do you understand, guys? The problem here is, I know the view is there. I know there is something where the application is asking me to enter the first name. Where should I enter the first name? Do you remember that view which I talked about earlier, which is going to get the input from user? What do you call it as? You call it as edit text. You know, all of them are the label. I mean, all of them are the text views there. So those text views are the read-only text. If I want to get the input from user, next to that text view, I'm going to create something called as an edit text, which is going to be match parent and wrap content. Now you can understand what is match parent and what is wrap content. This is where user is going to enter the first name. If I run my code, let's see what happens now. Till last time, I was not able to enter anything, but all of a sudden, when I say first name, and if I click on that, wow, the keyboard comes in, and I'm going to put my name there. That's it. See how simple is that? I mean, it's very straightforward, isn't it? All you have to do here is create a text view, create an edit text, create a text view, create an edit text. So copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, and you are done with your user interface. Guys, it took hardly a few minutes for us to design an interface like this. Imagine what can we do with it? How simple is that? It's so straightforward. You can now expect users' first name, you know, last name, for example, or the phone number, blah, 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 or the email address, blah, 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 and see, it's done. It's as simple as that. So my sign up screen is now having first name, last name, phone number, and email address with very little effort there. Okay, so I hope things are looking so simple, and things are simple rather, Now tell me one thing, do you remember in case of input, we were using a property called as a placeholder in HTML. Do you remember that? Placeholder property. And if you do remember, can someone tell me what's the use of that placeholder, where it shows, and what is the use of it? Exactly, what to enter. Generally, it's a kind of a hint given to the user. Am I right? So you are kind of giving a hint saying, hey, enter first name here or enter last name here. That's a kind of a hint. When you're using placeholder, you are kind of giving a hint. Oh, one more time. What are you giving user there with the help of placeholder? You are giving a hint. You are giving a hint. Just go ahead and say hint, Android colon hint. Placeholder in HTML, in CSS is nothing but hint in Android. So maybe I can say enter first name here. You see, it shows exactly like it would have shown a input, the placeholder in input there. Okay, so probably I'm gonna go back here and say hint property for this one says enter last name here. You see how simple is that? Going to do the same thing here. Maybe I'm gonna go back and say this is going to be the hint property. I'm gonna say enter what? Phone number here. Or better, instead of saying enter, I'm just gonna say that 1 2, that's +91 +1 2, whatever it is, and dash 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So probably this is how we can ask user to have this particular phone number format there. Again, for email address, it's better we can just say, better we can just say this is going to be, say, example, fine, example at example.com. So user will know that, oh, this is where I need to put the email address with this format. This is where I have to put the phone number with this format, and so on and so forth. I hope you can understand how simple it is, and you can do your own screen designing later after the session. Yes, more readable. It is more readable, and it is very simple. And especially for those who know how to develop HTML, CSS, React, for them, it's a piece of cake. I hope you can get it in that way. I'm just trying to compare both of them, what you have learned earlier and what you are learning there. It's almost similar. It's just a change of the platform and change of the language. That's it. But concept is exactly similar. Okay, now you know what exactly we are doing. Let's continue further and say, I want to get the input from user, not today, but tomorrow. But to do this, remember, I'm supposed to get two buttons here, button save and button cancel. Okay, so how do I get a button? Okay, as simple as that. So there is a button, you see, and this button is, again, you see, it's kind of a match parent and wrap content, and you see that it has created a very nice looking button here, So go back and change the text, and you might say something like save, as simple as that. You can copy this, paste it, and you can change this to a cancel. You see, this is going to be the cancel. Oops, cancel. That's it. So that's a save button and that's a cancel button. That's it. This is the way we can do it. Okay, so of course, if I run this application, the UI is going to change a little bit. Earlier it was a different UI. This one is a different UI that looks a little bit professional now. So if I click on those buttons, nothing is going to happen because we haven't written any code on that, which is obvious because we have not done anything there yet. We will do that function. We'll make them functioning tomorrow. But today I want to at least fix my UI. I want to make them look like this. I mean, this in a sense, now they are very wide and they are kind of next to each other, or vertically next to each other, should I say. How do I make them horizontal? Any guess, guys? First, let me change that wrap content to, match parent to wrap content. So at least those buttons will be a little bit smaller or a little bit needed for, yes, that's correct. Needed, whatever the width is needed for them to render, they will be having that much of space. That's good. But how do I make them vertical? I'm sorry, how do I make them horizontally? Because if I look at my UI says you have to make them vertical, I'm sorry, horizontal orientation, right? How do I do that? Horizontal orientation, Gauri, yes, but how do I do it? Can I go back here in this particular linear layout, which is going to be the entire linear layout, and probably if I change this to horizontal, see, it has literally screwed up every single thing there. Oh my God. So I can't fix that. I mean, this is the main layout where all of these widgets should be next to each other. That's correct. I just want to create these two buttons next to each other, meaning instead of just rendering them individually, I want to create one more linear layout here, which is going to have match parent and wrap content. And right within this linear layout, I can go back and put these two buttons like this. And then I can change that. I mean, I don't have to. You see that it already has changed that orientation to horizontal because that's a default one here. See, this is the simplest one. I hope you understood the logic here. The logic here is for this portion, I'm going to create a linear layout, put those buttons there inside it, and simply change the orientation to horizontal. So for entire screen, the orientation is vertical. Only for button section, this is going to be horizontal. That's it. But there is a problem. There is no space in between. No big deal. I'm going to go back to button, cancel, and add space before it. Now tell me one thing. You said that padding last time. What is a padding? I hope you know that. Padding means it's a space within the border. What do you call that? The space outside the border? What do you call the space outside the border? Margin, exactly. I want to add a margin on left side. So I'm going to say margin left to something like 10 dp, I think. Sorry, 10 dp. And yeah, look at that. Both of them are kind of separated with 10 pixels back. Oh, I don't want to play any game. I don't have that much of time to play game. Now just go away. Go away. Huh. That's the reason I don't use device in demos. Now it just, the hell is that? Okay, let me just change this, run this, and make sure that it's kind of giving me the same UI. Of course it will. You see, this is my sign up screen and things are looking so simple, so simple. Good. I hope you are getting it. Are you? Great. You see, there's only one concern. Buttons are not functional. In a sense, if you click on button for rest of your life, nothing is going to happen. It's not something like when you say cancel, it will automatically cancel out. You'll have to write the code behind it, right? How do you do that? I'll show you a trick here. So go to your activity class, main activity class, where you are calling that set content view to r.activity.main, and write a method here. Method has to have a public, a void. You can have any name there. I'm going to say on cancel, for example, and you can get a view v. Now, what is that view? Remember what I talked about earlier? I said that every widget you are creating is having a parent called as a view here. So that's a parent view. So use this method format, public, void, whatever name you want to go for, and say view, and just use this method on cancel. Go back to your XML file, go back to your button and say on click. Do you remember on click? In HTML, same thing, just put the name. Do not call the method, just put the name here. That's it. See, I'm going to put that here and say, what should I say? I should say something like a kind of say log statement. Fine. So use this log today. Just use it as it is. What I say here. This is where I'm going to call it as main activity. This is a kind of a tag, means more information about your log. And this is the actual log I'm going to put on console. Let's say cancel button clicked. Okay, that's how we can do it, as simple as that. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to run this application here. And if I click on cancel, where should I see the log? Just scroll down, just go down here and you can see something called as a log cat. So click on that logcat and you will see whatever you are going to or whatever the application is going to generate here. Do you see? Okay, let me just delete that log. I mean, let me clear this out. That's another reason why I don't use device here. Just give me a second, guys. When I use the device, it's going to show me lots of logs. It will be very difficult for me to see them here. So it's better. I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to use my emulator there. Okay. Now this is another application I'm developing for my client there. So that's what I was doing earlier, I guess. So now I'm going to use this one here. That's an emulator. Emulator will have less number of logs because it's not the real device, you know. So if I click on cancel, you see that when I click on cancel, I see the cancel button clicked. Click on that cancel button again, cancel button again, cancel button again, cancel button, button. And you see that those many times it shows me cancel button clicked. As simple as that. Now, what's the job of cancel here? When I click on cancel, I want that activity to go away. I'm in activity right now. You see, main activity is extended from the app compact activity, which means I'm in activity right now. So I want to cancel this activity. How do I? Maybe I'll say cancel the activity. How do I do that? It's as simple as finish. Finish means just terminate the activity. I'm done with it. See, I'm going to click on cancel and see what happens now. I'm going to click on cancel and boom. Okay, this was my application I was running. Just give me a sec. Let me go back to main screen and let's delete this. Let's delete this and let's come back here again. Let me run this application again and see when I click on cancel, you see the application quits. I mean, it's not application quit, but it's like the activity closes or activity finishes. That's it, guys. I hope you can understand what we have done here. So probably we know now what are we doing right now. So probably we are developing a native application for Android only. The application is going to get built by using Java, by using XML. Java is where we are going to write the logic. XML is where we are going to create the UI and we are going to add them together with the help of this method set content view r.layout.activity inside on create. Okay. So that's something we have seen today. Our application is very nice. It has a very good user interface today. The cancel button is functioning. If you want, you can make the save button functioning as well. Function in a sense, at least click on the save button and see if that save button's method is getting called. That's it. It's all about a simple kind of hello world application in Android. Okay. So I think that's more than enough for day one, should I say. Now, tomorrow we'll start with the next part, or maybe I'll revise it very quickly tomorrow and then we'll go for the next part starting from tomorrow. Okay. We are going to develop a maybe a kind of a good application or good amount of screens in our application and see how the application will behave, how the application will interact with multiple activities, or how we'll have multiple screens inside our application. So we'll see that as and when we need it. Okay. So for now, this is more than sufficient. Anyways, so within an hour, maximum an hour and a half, I'm going to put the video because it takes a little bit time to encode the video and get it available on your on your student portal. But once it is available, I'll send a message. So probably you can go ahead, watch this video one more time, try this on your own and see if it is possible for you to start creating your first application, create your first UI. Okay. So I hope you know that starting from tomorrow, we are going to start our session earlier in the morning, almost like 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 to 1. Hopefully you know that, and it will be kind of hell lot of things we are going to see here. Okay, so you will see how to develop a good application there. Anyways, we'll talk about that. So I think it's better we can call it a day. Again, as usual, thank you very much for attending today's session. Really appreciate that you are attending, though it was late, though it was Sunday evening. I know I screwed your Sunday evening there, but so sorry for that. Apologies for it. But hopefully you must have started learning the new technology here. Okay, we'll continue further tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye. Very good night. I'll see you tomorrow exactly at 8 o'clock. Till then, I would take a leave. See you. Good night, guys. Please be there on time tomorrow morning. Okay. Bye-bye. Where are you?